What's up guys, my name is Ace, and welcome back to another gun guide. This is a series where I go into great detail with all of the stats as well as some excellent attachment combinations for every gun in Call of Duty Vanguard. And in today's episode, we're going to be moving on to the next marksman rifle, and this is the M1 Garand. And starting it off as always, let's have a look at our damage profile, and we've got a very interesting damage profile here because we have 4 different damage areas. Most guns only have 2 to 3. The M1 Garand has 4. And as we can see there, from the knee down as well as the elbow down on the character model, we're going to be dealing 43 damage, so it'll be a 3-shot kill if you hit those areas. However, if you hit the upper leg or the bicep and upper arm area, it's going to deal 61 damage, which will be a 2-shot kill. And if you hit him anywhere in the torso, it's going to be 66 damage, which is also a 2-shot kill. And just to top that off, our headshot damage is 91, which again, that's a 2-shot kill. And as a result, with the M1 Garand, it's going to be a 2-shot kill in almost every single situation. Technically, you can get a 3-shot kill, but I'd say it's actually hard to get a 3-shot kill with this gun because those areas where you do get a 3-shot kill are so tiny and often moving quite a bit as well. You're much more likely to hit center mass. Now, as for our rate of fire, this is 300 rounds per minute, which is faster than the SVT-40 by a noticeable margin, but not quite as fast as the G43. And what this means for our time to kill potential is if we're getting a 2-shot kill, it'll be a 200 millisecond time to kill, which is a very competitive time to kill, especially when you start looking at longer ranges. That's an incredibly good time to kill. After that, our bullet velocity is standard for marksman rifles at 930 meters per second, and now let's get into our ranges, which, this is very interesting with the M1 Garand. In the stats stated in the menu, it says we only get a range value of 63 meters. However, it turns out there's no actual damage drop-off that I've been able to find. I was able to test this beyond 100 meters, and you deal the exact same damage to all of the areas of the body at 100 meters compared to point-blank range. So there's effectively no damage drop-off with the M1. Keep in mind, this also applies to attachments, so all of those attachments that say they reduce your damage range, you don't actually have to worry about that with the M1 Garand. It doesn't mean anything. As for hardcore game modes, this will be a 1-shot kill anywhere in the body, no matter what the range. And this is where we can move into Hipfire, which, as you can see here, it's exactly the same as the G43, and it actually has a pretty solid Hipfire spread here. It's not bad at hipfiring if you get up close and personal. And then let's have a look at our idle sway, which is actually pretty ridiculous. There's a lot of idle sway here, way more than I would have expected for a marksman rifle. So this is something you probably want to be focusing on with attachments, and it is something to consider, especially for your longer range builds. After that, let's get into our recoil, which, as you can see there's a decent amount of visual recoil, but it turns out it looks like it's kicking a lot more than it actually does. It's mainly just the animation of the gun kicking upwards. In reality, it kicks basically straight up. There's a little bit of a jump between the first and second shot, but aside from that, there's very, very little recoil. Then, taking a look at our aim down sight spread, or bloom, with all of the marksman rifles, there's essentially 0 aim down sight spread, so that's something you just don't have to worry about with these guns. And now let's get into our handling stats, and our aim down sight time is actually pretty decent for a marksman rifle, at least, at 335 milliseconds. And then after that, our sprint out time is exactly the same as the other marksman rifles at 300 milliseconds for our standard sprint out time and 450 milliseconds for our tactical sprint out time. Then let's have a look at our reload add time, and if the gun's not empty, it'll take 2.6 seconds to reload, which is a pretty slow reload time, especially for an 8-round clip. That's pretty ridiculous. However, an interesting thing with the M1 Garand, if you're using a clip and not one of the magazine attachments, and if you fire the gun until it's empty, you're going to be reloading noticeably faster at just 1.52 seconds. And this is very interesting because with most of the other guns in the game, you get a slower reload time if you fire the gun all the way until it's empty. So with the M1 Garand, it's in your best interest to fire all the way, plus you get the added benefit of that amazing ping sound. And finally, when it comes to the base stats of the M1 Garand, let's get into our mobility, and our base movement speed is pretty solid at 10.7 miles per hour. Our sprint speed is just a little bit below average for marksman rifles, but it's still respectable, I would say. And then our aim walking movement speed is a little on the slow side at 4.3 miles per hour. Definitely not one of the strong suits of this gun. And speaking of weaknesses, I'm also going to point out, just like with the SVT-40, one of the big downsides with using any of the marksman rifles is you have a fairly high amount of flinch when you're shot. So that's something you should keep in mind while creating your class setups. Try to focus on some attachments that help with that flinch resistance. And with that, we can start moving into some of these unique attachments, and just like always, we're going to be starting it off with the barrel attachments and the effect that they have on the recoil. And when it comes to the first 2 barrels, these ones really noticeably reduce the recoil down to practically nothing. That's extremely accurate. However, the third one, this one doesn't really have much of an impact on recoil at all. That's pretty much the same as our base recoil. And then finally, with the precision barrel, this one pretty noticeably increases the vertical magnitude of the recoil, but it is worth noting there's still essentially zero horizontal recoil. As for how these barrels impact our ranges, none of them really do, aside from the precision barrel, which doesn't technically impact the range since it's an infinite range. But you'll see it does turn it into a 3-shot kill with a 400 millisecond time to kill, which is very slow. And let's dive a little bit deeper into that specific barrel because it has a direct impact on our time to kill. With this one, the big benefit is we can now get a 1-shot kill to the head at any range. But as we saw, the downside is we no longer get a 2-shot kill potential to the body, so that's the big trade-off there. And what this means is with a 3-shot kill, since there's no impact to our rate of fire, our time to kill potential is now 400 milliseconds, which is very, very slow. This isn't a very competitive time to kill at all. So you're really relying on getting that headshot, and that's why I would say this is just a really niche sort of attachment. If you're specifically going for headshots, maybe you're going for camo challenges, absolutely, you'll probably want to run this precision barrel. Outside of that though, you're probably just hurting yourself more than anything, and I wouldn't recommend using this. And that's pretty much it when it comes to the barrel attachments. There's nothing too much to say about the other ones. You can just see the in-game stated stats for yourself and make that decision if you want to use it. Now let's move on to magazines, and once again, we'll start it off with recoil. And as you can see there, it doesn't matter if you're using 303 British or the 6.5 Sakura rounds, both of these will pretty noticeably increase your recoil, but in reality what's happening is the rate of fire is just increased, so there's just less time to recenter between shots. So the actual recoil per shot isn't really that much higher, it's just it doesn't recenter as fast, which does increase the total magnitude that we can experience. As for ranges, once again, these have no impact on our actual range since it is an infinite range, but you'll see both 303 British and 6.5 Sakura will turn it into a 3-shot kill, and let's dive a little bit deeper into each of those because we've got some interesting damage values. Starting it off with 303 British, this will now be a 3-shot kill most of the time. You can technically get a 4-shot kill if you hit below the knees or below the elbow, but that is going to be rare, so most of the time this will now be a 3-shot kill. Unless we land a headshot, you can cut that back down to a 2-shot kill. However, this does come at an increase to our rate of fire, up to 451 rounds per minute, and what this means is our time to kill potential is 266 milliseconds. This isn't a great time to kill by any means. It's not like it's unusable or anything, and at really long ranges, 266 milliseconds is fine. It's just up close and personal, you're going to have a hard time competing with any SMGs or assault rifles out there, and therefore I'd say this is generally not a great option to be using. As for the 6.5 Sakura rounds, these ones also turned it into a 3-shot kill. However, that 3-shot kill only applies to the torso. If we hit the upper legs or the bicep area on the character model, we deal 27 damage, which is actually a 4-shot kill. And if we hit below the elbow or below the knees, it can technically take up to 5 shots to kill. But again, it's really unlikely we're hitting that. Most of the time you're hitting torso. And as a result, in most situations, it should still be a 3-shot kill for you. It's just you may run into the odd 4-shot kill here or there. So with this, our damage profile isn't quite as good as 303 British, but our rate of fire is boosted quite a bit more, up to 526 rounds per minute, which gives us a time to kill potential of 228 milliseconds at any range. This is still slower than the base time to kill of the gun, but this time to kill potential is still what I'd consider to be competitive. You can still keep up with SMGs and assault rifles up close, while dominating most things at longer ranges. So as a result, I would say at least if you've got the trigger finger for it and you can actually reach this fire rate cap, this isn't a completely terrible choice on the M1 Garand if you're looking for something that's a bit more spammable, something that's a bit more forgiving if you miss the odd shot here or there. And while I prefer just the standard 30-06, if I want to increase the fire rates, this is my preference. I would rather go with the 6.5 Sakura over 303 British. Now, one last unique attachment that I wanted to talk about with the M1 Garand that is very important because most people don't know about this yet. This is the Vital Proficiency. Most of the time, the Vital Proficiency is a no-brainer. This is the best attachment you can use on so many of the guns in the game. However, based on my testing with the M1 Garand, Vital is literally useless. It does nothing to help you at all. I tested this with a variety of attachment combinations as well, and it just doesn't seem to do anything. So stay away from Vital, it's a wasted attachment. And with that, we can finally move into some excellent attachment combinations, and we're going to start it off with my preference with the M1 Garand. This is my 2-shot laser. Now with this one, some of the keys are going to be the 30-06 12-round magazine, just so we get a little bit of a higher capacity. We've also got the padded stock on there, we've got the Cooper 25-inch custom barrel, and with all of this combined, we get a 2-shot kill anywhere in the body aside from below the elbow or below the knees, but that's going to be rare that you ever hit that, so it's not really something to worry about. We've got that infinite range, a rate of fire potential of 300 rounds per minute with a time to kill of 200 milliseconds at any range. We've also got pretty decent handling for a marksman rifle, especially one that's designed to be so accurate and consistent at longer ranges. And when we look at the recoil of this, you can see there is very little recoil. There's practically no recoil. You can spam this at the maximum fire rate across the map and still be picking people off really consistently. This is the best way, in my opinion, to use the M1 Garand. However, one thing that I often swap between is the optic. Sometimes I go 2.5x, sometimes I go with the slate reflector. Just depends on the map or how I'm feeling in that moment. So that's the first class setup and the one that I would generally recommend. However, I wanted to share just an alternative build that's a bit more spammable. And with this one, we're using the 6.5 Sakura. Once again, we're using the Cooper 25-inch custom barrel. We've got the Cooper adjustable stock on this. And with this, you can see that it's quite accurate and controllable, even when spamming it near the maximum fire rate here. There's very little recoil. It just sort of slowly climbs straight upward. And the main thing is, you just got to make sure you're hitting torso shots, which is fairly easy to do. If you can consistently hit torso shots, you're going to get consistent 3-shot kills out to an infinite range with a very fast fire rate. A lot of people can't even hit this fire rate with their trigger fingers, but if you can, this is excellent. And this also has really good handling for a marksman rifle. Our aim down sight time is just above 300 milliseconds, which is pretty much as good as you're going to get on a marksman rifle. So yeah, like I said, this isn't necessarily my preference for the M1 Garand. It's just an alternative that I wanted to offer for you guys, for those that like spamming that trigger finger a little bit more. And with that, that's going to wrap it up for today's gun guide on the M1 Garand. As for my thoughts on this gun, I really like it. As a marksman rifle, I think it does exactly what it should be doing. It's a nice, consistent 2-shot kill at any range. You don't have to have the most amazing trigger finger out there to make it work really effectively, and it's just super accurate. I really, really like it, and I highly recommend using it if you haven't put too much time into it so far. Now, of course, that is just my opinion. I'd like to hear from you guys in the comment section below. What do you guys think of the M1 Garand? And also, if you guys have missed any of the previous episodes, I will, of course, leave a link to the playlist in the description down below. If you enjoyed the video, a like rating is always appreciated. And don't forget to subscribe for more if you haven't already. I'll talk to you guys next time.